This is episode 4 of That's When I Knew, the podcast, where real people have real conversations about the journey towards building a meaningful career. I'm your host, Robert Creighton.
And I'm your co-host, Zakia Kunadu.
On this week's episode, we're joined by seasoned sales pro, upcoming LinkedIn influencer, and host of the Rankable podcast, Jarrett Thomas. Jarrett has spent the last 10 years working in the MarTech and ad tech industries as a business development and sales professional, and is currently working as a senior account executive for a marketing and advertising agency called iPullRank. On this week's episode, Jarrett discusses the value of building a professional network and social following, and the importance of being creative when it comes to earning social currency through content. Jarrett also brings up an interesting perspective on the value, or lack thereof, of diversity and inclusion functions within tech. Now, before we get into the show, if you're listening on Spotify, Google, or Apple Podcasts, be sure to subscribe, rate the show, and leave your thoughts in the comment section. You can also watch, subscribe, and engage with the video version of this show on YouTube as well. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy. All right, Jarrett. Well, thank you for joining the show, man. Thank you. You're on that East Coast time, so appreciate you staying up a little later to join Zakia and I. As I told you a little bit, That's When I Knew, the podcast, and basically, it's real people having real conversations about the journey towards building a meaningful career. Yeah. I've been knowing you for a couple years now. We worked together at Talkwalker. Yeah. So why don't you go ahead and give our listeners and viewers kind of a rundown of yourself, and just introduce yourself to the listeners out there.
Yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, thank you both for having me and being a guest. As soon as I heard the concept of the podcast, Rob is a good friend of mine, man. Anything I could do to support and help you guys, I'm on board. So I'm happy you guys got this off the ground, and honored to be here. But myself, for anybody who doesn't know, I'm Jarrett Thomas. I'm a senior account executive at iPullRank. I've been in sales for about 10 to 11 years now. I'm currently from the Bronx, born and bred. Worked at some cool places. One was Talkwalker with Rob. I was one of the first employees at Cannes Lions Festival. So if you guys know the big festival out in France, I was one of the first American employees. I was a VP of the agency at 25. Jumped around the SaaS platforms, and right now I'm at the agency iPullRank with the team, Mike King and the rest of the team, and love what I'm doing, man. So happy to share some sales insights and marketing tips and just have some real conversation with you guys.
Awesome. We appreciate you, bro. We appreciate you being on the show. And yeah, man, really it's all about giving you an opportunity to share your career journey. There might be people out there that are, they're looking to get into the type of job and the type of career that you're in. And they're just looking for, direction and, and seeing someone that's finding success, and seeing how they're maneuvering their career. So again, yep.
Yeah, so I can definitely give you guys a rundown of like what my career has been, right? And I'll be very honest. I think I wasn't successful for a long time, to be honest with you. There was a lot of failure and a lot of learnings throughout that. So my first sales job was at a mortgage company, like probably 2 years before I got to the digital space. So that's how I kind of got into the sales space. So end up getting lucky. I was at barista at Starbucks. I was a waiter. I was doing all types of things. And I'm like, all right, I'm 20 years old, got a 2-year-old, like I'm about to have a baby. I'm like, what is going on? I got to change my whole format. So when I started going on Indeed every day, I was posting, applying to every single job application I could see. I was going on 4 to 5 interviews a day, 2 in the Bronx, 3 in Brooklyn, 1 in Queens, and I have to be back uptown by 4 o'clock for the babysitter or something. It was crazy. So I ended up lucking up, got this opportunity.
Yeah, but hold on, before we even get there, Jarrett, because we got plenty of time, and we got plenty of time, and I can already tell that you're going to have one of those inspiring stories for a lot of brothers out there, a lot of people that look like us, and not people that don't look like us, that are going like an atypical, route, towards being in corporate America, whatever it is you might be doing. Yeah. So let's take it all the way back. I know you're on the East Coast. Can you give us a quick rundown on where you grew up, how you grew up, and then also how your upbringing has kind of affected how your approach towards building your career?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born and bred in the Bronx. I'm the youngest of 4. So I've got 2 twin sisters. I have an older brother who's, everybody in my family is teacher related, right? Everybody's with the educational sector. My mom is assistant principal. My pops was a custodian and a school aide for 26 years. So he would work from 8 o'clock in the morning to 12 o'clock at night and did that for 27 years. Wow. So Yeah, so I get a lot of my work ethic from him, right? So when I was growing up, I was in private school. They bust their tail to make sure I had the best education. Of course, what I do, I get kicked out of the best school, whatever. You know what I mean? To go to public school, and then things kind of got hectic from there. You know what I mean? But basically, my parents are big. They stress education. They stressed. You got to be on top of it. My pops. If you want to go get something, if you want something, you got to go get it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to not be in his shoes. And how can I create a path for the next generation, my kids and their kids and things like that. So I'm the one person that went left, right? So when everybody was like, hey, you could be a teacher and, go in this field, I got the plug. You know what I mean? I was like, I have to figure it out. And that journey and me figuring it out is kind of how I led into sales and, how I incorporate some things. I definitely go in as we continue, but.
I guess I would want to know, so because your upbringing, you're around so many people who are educators, is that just something you saw and you were like, that's not for me. That's just not something that I have an interest in, like what turned you away from that so much?
To be honest with you, I think it was seeing them bust their tail and seeing my mom being a great teacher, seeing the impact she has on kids. But from a financial gain perspective, I'm like, it doesn't translate.
Right.
One thing, like my wife, she's a teacher. Like she could be the best teacher in all of New York, all of the Bronx. But what financial incentive do you have to keep moving forward and putting your best foot forward and really providing for these kids? You have to really love what you do. And that's really what it is. Because like everybody, I would see my mom, she was assistant principal. She made good money. But it wasn't to the point where, we were in the big house and things like that. We had the Benz and all that stuff. We were living modest. We had a good upbringing, you know what I mean? But it wasn't flashy by no means, right? So I look at that and say, that she does that because she loves the kids. She loves the impact that she makes on the kids.
Right.
I would love to do that, but I want to do it on my terms. I want to be able to come back and say, hey, this is what I did. I want a different path. You know what I mean? And this is what you can do. You don't have to just go one route. So from a financial standpoint, I have kids. I've got things I want to do and accomplish. And I just felt financially that wasn't it. And plus, I'm just like the black sheep. I'm like, all right, you guys going that way. Let me figure it out over here. And it is, thank God, by the grace of God, it worked out.
So, I mean, you mentioned that early on in your career, you were doing like kind of side jobs, baristas, bartenders, jobs like that.
Yep.
I like, what were the jobs you were kind of exposed to outside of education? Let's say in like high school, like what did you want to be like when you were younger?
When I was younger, man, I hate to sound cliche, but I was rapping, I was balling, I was in there all city in basketball. So, I was doing that. And then once I was at Scaling, my senior Scaling, I'll give them a plug. So that was the private high school I was in, right? So I was doing basketball with them. I got kicked out as sophomore year. So imagine going from you're in college courses and things like that as a freshman. Now I go to junior and Evander and they try to teach me a verb. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You know what I'm saying? It's lit outside and you trying to tell me about a verb? I can't. I gotta go outside. Tell me when the test is. And so like as far as jobs, what I did, I was probably like in sophomore year, I was working at Hallmark. I was just like one of those lookout guys in front of the store, act like you guys are stealing something. I see something, but check your bag. And that's what I was doing for about a whole year. I was like the only dude as a sophomore with a full-time, not a full-time, but like I had a job Monday through Friday, right after school, right to Hallmark. It was right up the block in my house, go do homework. And from there, it was just, kept that for a little bit. Then once I went to Evander Childs, that kind of, one of my friends had a situation. I ended up giving him my job. And then, I'm like, I'm in a better situation financially. My mom got me if I need money. So I gave the job to him. And, like a good friend, he messed that up.
Oh man.
I think it helps to share kind of more about Jarrett's what you're doing now so people can connect the dots, because again, this show is about your career journey, right? Yeah. And these jobs that you're describing early on, it's totally you're not in retail or the service industry anymore. Let's go ahead and skip to the future just a tad bit. Can you tell us what you're doing today? And just tell us what you're doing today.
Yeah, so right now I'm working at an agency called iPullRank. So we basically specialize, we're a boutique agency. We specialize in SEO strategy, content, social media strategy, the whole gamut, anything that a typical faceted agency would do. So basically what I've done in terms of my sales career now, what makes it unique, right, is that when I first came into iPullRank, my managing director has a Twitter following of like 60K. Oh, so I was like, yeah. So I'm like, oh, you don't see that from executives. So I'm like, all right, that struck me to something, right? And then he helped build that through all his Twitter following. So I'm like, what can I do to bring value? And as soon as I came in the first week, I'm like, I'm going to own LinkedIn. You're not on that channel. I've got some following. I've got a few connections. Let me just go hard with it, right? Then within the first week of me posting something, I got one of the posts I made got taken by LinkedIn editors. I ended up getting 40,000 views on one post.
Oh, wow.
Then I quit my blog from there. So my main thing is like what I'm doing now that kind of I think would separate myself from like other salesmen is that I'm using social and relationship building in order to drive a pipeline. So instead of the average, you send out 500 emails a day, you do your 100 calls a day. I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? So I was thinking, how do I create content to make people like me and break down the sales barrier so you come to me for information, right? So it's like, how can I be the trusted voice so I'm not just in your DM like, hey, please buy from me, please buy from me. It's like, hey, Jarrett, I seen your content like for the past 2 months. Love what you're doing. I went to your website. I saw what you're doing. How can we make a partnership happen? And that's kind of what my sales process has been like, and even more so since the pandemic, right? If I wasn't doing that in November, I probably
look a little different.
It'd be completely different.
Right.
You know what I mean? So when my team or like other members I know they're doing sales or other teams and stuff like that, they're like, Jay, are you doing the same things with cold emails? No, I'm not sending them. I'm not sending them. I'm reaching out and relying on my network. If somebody comes in town, cool, I'll work it. But I want to build genuine relationships. And I've been able to, I'm not from the SEO community. I've got friends that are global SEO managers at IBM, Advanced Auto Parts, big financial banks. I've had posts that were liked by the CEO of Stars Entertainment. Wow. So, think about power. I'm just a dude from the Bronx who's a salesman, but I'm creating content that can get liked by somebody of that magnitude. So imagine the doors that's opened up from a sales perspective. Yeah, that's where I think I took that knowledge from where me and you were working, Rob, that social media skills and the understanding of what really gets people to tick and what people, what brands should be doing to elevate themselves on social and applied it to myself.
Nice.
I love that. I'm sorry. What is SEO? Do that turn out?
It's search engine optimization. So basically just think about it's just Google, right? How is Google viewing your website, right? Are you going to be ranking on page 1? What keywords you do? And, everybody's looking to be on page 1. If you're on page 2, 3, 4, nobody really thinks at that point. Exactly. Okay. So that's what everybody's trying to fight for, that first spot, and we help them optimize for it.
Nice.
So basically Jarrett's and iPull rank, they are in the advertising space. And Jarrett's role in particular, he's a salesperson. So your job is to get out there and get contacts at these companies and get them to then purchase your services to help optimize their SEO rankings. Is that correct?
You got it. Spot on.
And and what I love about what I love about what you're talking about, Jarrett, is that it's the absolute truth. We live in a new day and age. Obviously, I'm in sales. Yep. The theme of these first few episodes of That's When I Knew podcast, we're actually speaking with people that are in sales, different industries. Yeah. But I think what we're going to find is the common theme is creativity. You have to be creative nowadays because if you're selling something, there's a million other people selling the same thing.
Exactly.
What separates you, right? What separates you from the pack, right? And at the end of the day, right, nobody wants to be sold to, right? People want to feel like they're in the know. They want to, like I said, everybody knows what they know, right? But nobody wants to be sold to. So one thing, like I said, that really makes an impact is just being authentic, being yourself, just putting what you want out there. If you look at the brands now today, right? If you look at somebody's Twitter account, you don't want the corporate response. I want to know what you know what I mean? What are your alliances lead? Who the hell did you vote for? Whatever, right? And that's how buyers are looking at us as salespeople, right? Who are you aligned with? Who are you talking to? What is your experience like? Why the hell should I trust you? Yeah. And we just got to be creative with it. That's another thing. Like I'm a musician, so it's the same thing, right? If you're doing rap, how many people do you guys know individually that rap? We probably know hundreds, right? When was the last time you went and listened to somebody's music that you don't know?
This is true.
Never. I'm scrolling. I don't care, fam. You could be the nicest dude ever. I don't care. So that kind of applies to what we do in our day to day. So like I take that same philosophy and that same strategy. But how do you separate yourself from the pack, right? How do you build more value to your customers? And one line that I'll definitely share with you guys that for social, especially on LinkedIn, teach them how to fish and they'll learn you sell fishing poles.
Say that one more time for the listeners.
Yeah, teach them how to fish, and they'll learn you sell fishing poles, right? And the whole concept behind that is I don't have to just promote what I'm doing all day, every day.
Yeah.
Right? You just got to get to like me. I got to tell you my story. It could resonate. I might have had steak last night, right? And just posted on LinkedIn. Does it have anything to do with business? A buyer might see that, like, damn, I like mine medium rare too, Jay. My man. Now we talking. Now I got you. Now I could be in your DM. Yeah. Now I could have a conversation. Now I could build a relationship.
Yeah.
So for everybody who's listening out there, like, please just think about, you don't have to be me. Give first and then expect, right? It's going to be the long game. The strategy is the long game, right? You might not get any revenue the first 3-4 months. Yeah. Month 7, starts clicking instantly. So please, if you guys are doing emails, I know you guys are getting bounces out there. Like, you know, this guy doesn't work here. 40 million people are unemployed. How can you build your brand better?
Right.
How can you be more effective? And that's definitely the way. That's the modern sales in 2020.
Modern sales of 2020. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Well, hey, you know, you're giving a bunch of game and a bunch of wisdom to the viewers, and
I appreciate it.
You know, I'm curious. You know, looking back on your career so far, right? Is there some foreshadowing that happened? Like, like, at what point did you know that you were meant to be in sales? Like, at what point did you know that this is what I'm meant to do?
I think my first sales job at Intent, right? So this was like a job that we were doing display advertising. So if you guys know, display advertising is you go to the website to either pop up or something on the side rail, right? So we had placements on like Viacom, Meredith, Scripps. So if you were a children's birthday party planner, we put you on Nick Jr. or Nick.com. So for a small advertiser, that's huge, right? But there was strictly just phone. There wasn't much social media. It wasn't LinkedIn like that, right? So I was just pounding the phone. And then once I got to basically in the first 3 months, I ended up grossing $250,000 per quarter. And then did that 8 consecutive quarters. So that moment right there, I'm like, okay, when I'm on the phone, I'm a beast. I know I could build relationships. I know I could talk to people, but that's our nature from where we've been. I've always been a hustler. I've always been somebody selling something to you. I don't care what it is. I'm selling something. I'm always trying to find a way to make a buck, right?
Yeah.
What is it? I want to hone in on that. What is it about, like, you said we've always been hustling. We've always been selling. Like, let's unpack that a little bit. Like, why is that? Like, why have we always been selling and why have we always been hustling?
Because we look at our environment, right, where we come up, right? It goes back to earlier when you were asking about, my experience and my family and things like that, right? So my family, my pops was working 2 jobs, but he was also selling clothes on the side from 28th Street. Keep it real. Right. You know what I mean? All those Gucci bags, stuff like he was making money on the side. So I look at that, I'm like, there's always ways and opportunities to make money. There's always ways to diversify your revenue stream, right? And for me, it's just like, I knew I'm good at relationship building. I know I have to gift the gab, right? But how do I put that in the business world? And once I got on the phone and understand I can control the conversation, it was like right there I knew. But by no means did I have any plan to get into sales. It was just like I kind of it fell in my lap. A guy just seen my resume. He heard me talking to another dude. I was going to a hospital call center job. Saw me talking. He's like, yo, sell me this pencil. I like the way you carry yourself. Sold him a pencil like straight out of Wolf of Wall Street. Kid you know?
Right, that's a prototypical movie scene.
I didn't know what it was. I'm like, yo, what do you mean by that? Like, what is that? I just told him something logical. Like, what you need to write, you need to write something, right? So where's your paper? Like, you're gonna need this, right? This is a number 2 and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then next thing you know, 2 days later, I'm at his office, and then I got that opportunity. And then the first day at that job, I'm going around the room. People are like, hey, I'm from Yale, I'm from NYU, I'm from Cornell. I said, I'm Jarrett Thomas from Evander Childs High School in the Bronx, and I'm gonna be the top seller here. They laughed me out the room. Laughed me out the room. 3 months later, Jarrett, can you jump on this call, please? Jarrett,
do you feel like an education, especially in a career in sales, do you feel like an education is even necessary, or is there any benefit to having an education if you're going into sales?
I think there is a benefit to it, but I think experience is the best teacher. At least I can speak from my personal experience, right?
For sales in particular.
For sales in particular, right? Like somebody could teach you the sales, but at the end of the day, you don't know what it's like until you jump in the fire.
Right.
You don't know. You have to be quick on your toes. Like regardless of what they try to prepare you for, this person on the other line might be just the hardest buyer ever. He's throwing questions at you and objections at you. How do you overcome that without getting mad? How do you keep your tone level? How do you ask the right questions that actually show that you care about his business? Those are things you learn over time and getting right. You're not going to get it right. That's over years of learned You know, me and you being on calls forever, Rob, you know what the deal is now. Like 5 years in, you done learned it. You done lost the deals. You done thought you was going to have it, got all the way to the finish line, and they dropped off because you didn't know certain things or certain aspects of the biz.
Right.
So what advice do you give for someone who is looking to get into sales and, you know, they might be a little lost, whether they're on the same path as you or they did go to school? You know, what would be some top 3 things that you would, you know, what game would you give to them?
I would say sell something that you're passionate about.
Okay.
That's number one, right? Because if you don't believe in the product, it's going to bleed through when you speak, right? Like I'm pretty sure you know this, Rob. Like if you don't know the platform, like if you don't believe in what you're selling, it's going to come across and people are going to see it as fake or whatever the case may be. Like I love social media. So like, that's my thing. So when I got the Talk Walker, that was oh my goodness, I love it. And I was just trying to sell to everybody, you know what I mean? It didn't matter. Like, so first things first, make sure you love what you sell and do your due diligence on what that industry is, right?
Yeah.
Understand what are the buyer's potential challenges and objections you might face, right? First thing, and if you do get in sales, first thing you do in a job is speak with the person who's selling the most.
Okay.
A lot of people don't do that. Like I know us, especially as men, you know, even women, right? We have the ego. I don't want to ask nobody. I'm gonna figure it out. But no, no. Expedite your growth. Go to that person and say, I want to learn from you. I want to know exactly how you're getting this money. I want to know, I've got these goals. How can I obtain this? And then just map out your career and map it out from there. Like that's what I did. When I first started, I was good on the phones, but I see somebody, I'm doing 250K, but somebody else is doing 500. I don't know. I want to know how you got to the 5, brother. You know what I mean? I'm staying at 5:30, 6 o'clock with you. I'm buying you a beer. I'm going through your sales force. I'm going through your pipeline, looking at your call notes. What am I not asking? And that's how I improved in that particular situation, and just kind of carries over. So, you know, be yourself, you know, love your product and be authentic, right? Never fake or sell yourself out to get a deal, because more than likely you're only going to end up hurting yourself at the end, right?
Yeah. Well, I want to ask similar on that note, very specific advice from you, because you know, there's a lot of people out there that didn't go the college route. So how do they get that first sales job? Is there a particular segment they should go after, specific industries? Should they go directly into B2B sales? Should they go start working at Nordstrom's and sell shoes? Like, in your opinion, how does somebody break into corporate business to business sales? What would be your advice to that type of person?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I in the social media world, my best advice would be, all right, understand what that industry is and then create content and make relationships within that industry and go for it, right? If shoes are your passion, then go for it, right? But also understand what the earning potential is, right? I think we all as salespeople go in there for the earning potential, right? And as far as how you get there, you can build your audience to get into whatever industry you want nowadays. It's not like back in the days when we first started where it's like, all right, I'm on Indeed.com, I'm on this. There's so many different areas to go through, right? I lucked up, personally. You know what I mean? Like, I just lucked up. I'll be honest with you. I had no plan. I was going to be in France. And
well, hold on. Tell us about this luck. I want to know how you lucked up. Like, what was so lucky about your situation?
So you create your luck. I created my luck by doing those things. Or I created my luck by putting in 100 applications a day, right? Okay. It's just the law of averages. Out of that 100, say if I get on the low end, two hit. Yeah. That's 10 a week for me. Yeah. Out that 10 now, I've got 10 solid candidates. Right now, I've got to narrow it down to what I really want to do and what fits my, you know, my goals and, you know, culture fits and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just a numbers game. You got to be out there. And right now, especially in this time, 40 million people are unemployed, right? So how do you separate yourself from the pack? You got to create your own luck. You send a resume, there's going to be somebody who always looks better than you on paper, but they don't have what makes you unique. So how do you sell that and get the job? Yeah. You know, so that's one thing. Always grind, man. Always grind. I say it's lucky, but I was up to 2-3 in the morning putting in resumes, you know, sending it till my eyes was hurting. I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, I think I've been there before where I was applying to at least, you know, 100 jobs a day. It's sometimes it's just something you have to do. And then hopefully something bites back.
When you were doing that, did you have like a set industry or you were just going for it?
In the beginning, I was just going for it. I was like, I'm just going to apply, see who gets back to me. But then I started being a little bit more strategic about it and thinking, what aligns with my values and my passions? Do I want to be in tech? Do I want to be a nonprofit? Let me look at their vision and mission and things like that. But, I think people who are just coming in, like early professionals, they just want to have a job, right? Like they're just like, well, whatever place is willing to give me the experience, I'm with it. So, yeah.
I'm curious. I would love to ask you a question, right? How did you determine which companies fit your church culture and values, right? Especially in today's climate, right? How do we break down what's the best fit for us as African American professionals?
So for me, I like to look at who works there. I will go onto LinkedIn and I will see who works at the company, and I'm scrolling and I'm seeing how many people have look like me. If I don't see enough people at that company that look like me, that's a warning sign. That's like, stay away. I don't like that. I also want to look at who's on the leadership team. Is there a good mix of males and females? And then also just kind of reading a little bit more about, on their social media. Are they posting about the movement? Like, what are they talking about? What are they doing? Especially right now. So that's kind of what helps me. And I think it's really important to do that is, start stalking people on their, their social media accounts. That's where everything's at.
That's it. I totally agree with you. Even at that point, it's kind of hard to tell what's real and what's not. And I know you guys know what I mean by that. It's like it's hard to tell at certain points, right? Like, because I'm pretty sure all three of us have experienced some sort of, we've been blocked, we've been roadblocked, we've been something that's happened that wasn't necessarily supposed to happen, but it did happen and it helped our journey, right? So
and we're going to get to that. And I like what you said, Z, because I think that is important. And but I also think that that's something that we have the power to do once we're like mid-level in our career.
Mm-hmm.
But for folks that are new, fresh out of college or fresh off a career change, or they don't have a network, it is going back to those days where you were hustling, applying to 100 jobs.
Yeah.
And, I have a tip. I have a tip for our viewers and listeners out there. So if you are, graduating college and, you weren't the best student, you don't have a big network, and you're going to rely on applying to 100 jobs, apply to jobs that use an applicant tracking software like Lever or Greenhouse or LinkedIn. It'll save you a bunch of time from having to keep putting in your details.
Right.
So
totally.
If you all got any questions about that, go ahead and message me. But yeah, that's my advice to the listeners out there.
Totally. I remember we didn't have that. It was straight.
Bro, every time you have to put in your resume and then you have to type it all in again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh,
goodness.
Yeah.
Y'all got it easy nowadays.
I got it easy.
I would even ask.
Apply with LinkedIn. Boom, done.
But what you said though was really important before you even led up to that. Is like, you don't have an audience, right?
Yeah.
Right. They need to think, change, and shift their mindset. Is how do I build my audience first? Right. Once I get an audience, I can do whatever I want. Now I have the leverage.
Right.
Now I've got friends within the IT space. I got friends that are educators. I got friends that are in the banking. I've got friends in consumer marketing. Now it's your pick of the litter, right? But what can you do to bring value, right? And there's a big misconception, especially on LinkedIn, that you have to be this buttoned up professional all the time. I'll tell you guys a secret. I told Rob this. I put up a crackhead who was singing D Block on LinkedIn and got 30 likes. Straight up and down. You know why I did that? Because nobody else would. Nobody else would. And what I put on it was not that this dude is a crackhead, is that this dude is outside in the rain singing D Block. And we're sitting there complaining about us looking at a computer upstairs in the warmth.
Yeah, perspective.
Yeah,
perspective, right?
Yeah.
So it changes it, right? It sounds crazy, like, you put up a crackhead? Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Got 2 meetings, show did.
And I think that's also something that, sometimes we feel like we have to put on this persona, right? When we are in different companies and we are scared to be our authentic selves. And, obviously there's a certain level, but at the same time, that's what makes you stand out and that's what makes you different from other people. It's just honestly being real and being yourself and staying true to who you are, regardless of where you're working, And I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with. And I know I struggled with it, especially first starting. I was like, okay, I got to, act a certain way and put on this face and I can't talk like this. Exactly. So, yeah, but I think companies are becoming a little more progressive and they're being a little more open to, hey, differences is what's going to make us stand out. So
it's all about too what kind of understanding you have with your team and your management, right? Like I've been in places where my first job, I was telling you I was doing 250K. I had long braids down my back. They took me upstairs while I'm the top performer there, and they're like, "Hey, Jarrett, the board doesn't get you." I'm like, "What you mean the board doesn't get me?" Like I'm putting up numbers. I didn't know how to. This is my first professional job. I got baggy slacks with Pradas on and stuff like that. I'm not dressing right. I'm not looking right, but I'm producing, right?
Right.
So they bring me upstairs, and long story short is he's like, "Yo, maybe you should cut your hair." We had a moment right there. I had my hair since I was in the 7th grade. He took a deep breath. Oh, you got it, sir. Went home, got me the illest tape up ever. Came back in Monday morning to a $20,000 raise.
Wow.
Was it worth it though? I mean,
you know what?
In retrospect,
I look back at that now. That same story. I say it was, but he helped me.
Yeah.
I didn't look at it at that time. It's like, you know what? It was obviously it was messed up. Right. But in the hindsight, had I had long braids down my back, would I have been able to go to France and been the first employee at Cannes? How would they have looked at me and viewed me?
Right.
Honestly, I think that's a real conversation we need to have as people. It's like, okay, like how should things be, right? And things should be, you should have your braids and still get that $20,000 raise. Then there's also what's the reality of the situation, right? And that's just something that we need to have a conversation, but we also need to bring in other people. And I don't know if I'm even ready to have that conversation at this particular moment. But but it's one of those things where it's like, it's messed up. But, and it's just unfortunate that we as people even have to even think about that or go through this when we can't necessarily be ourselves or show our personality or culture and still get ahead in life and still get treated fairly and equally. You know what I mean?
But it's still, it's about perspective too, right? Like I could have been mad, I could have cursed him out in that same scenario, and then I wouldn't be even having this podcast conversation with you today.
Right.
What would have been my path then? So like we have to, it's outweigh the good and the bad, right? In that scenario, I was pissed off, I was mad, I went home, told my mom about it, I almost cried. He's cutting my hair, I'm sitting there damn near in tears. But at the same time, I have a 2-year-old at home, and now I've got $20,000.
Right. That's an easy. I mean, when you got a child and you got a family, that's an easy decision at that point.
Right.
But I also think this is why it's important that we need to have more diversity at the top, because that's a problem. Definitely. Like obviously, there was the board that had the issue, right? So that's why we need to have. That's why diversity and inclusion people in HR, having Black and brown folks in leadership positions. These are all important things. That I feel like would alleviate some of these things that we have to deal with coming in early on in our career,
I have a different perspective about diversity and inclusion, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I don't like the term. I don't like the fact that they have a role for it. It should just be all inclusive, because I feel like now you got diversity and inclusion. Now I have to talk to the sister or the brother about my issue specifically. Now it feels like this thing, you know what I mean? And I haven't seen much good out of it. I haven't seen much benefit from it other than saying, hey, we've got somebody in power who's the chief diversity officer. But that person is not on the website where it says chief revenue and chief marketing officer and chief that. They're not there.
Right. No, I get
what kind of power does that really have within the organization? Are we just a numbers game?
Yeah, no, you got a good point there.
Yeah.
Like, what is that? Why can't the diversity inclusion person be a white person, a Latino person, but also understand my issues?
Yeah.
Well, diversity and inclusion managers aren't always Black. I've worked with, they can be any ethnicity. But I just think their focus is on making sure the company is having a decision-making lens through diversity and inclusion, right?
Yeah.
But I agree with you at the same time, though, depending on the company, that still might not be enough, because you can have a big company and, like you said, that chief revenue officer, he's bringing in the $1 billion or $100 million in revenue each year. He's going to have a lot more power, or she, a lot more power, and and that's that. So that's why I believe that not only do we need to have these diversity and inclusion functions in place, but we still need to have diversity and inclusive or diverse leadership throughout different parts of the organization as well, to work collaboratively with the diversity and inclusion function.
Absolutely. That role is so expendable. If revenue dips tomorrow, what is the first role that can go?
Yeah.
I'm going to switch it up a little bit. And this is getting deep, but I want to give you an opportunity to give back to some of the younger listeners out there, the folks that might just be graduating high school or college. If you could give yourself some advice to your younger self, what would that be? One piece of advice, maybe. Yeah, I'll just leave it open like that.
One piece of advice, I'd have been taking a look into digital earlier. I would have known, like, looking at us as 18-year-olds, what is that like? I graduated in 2006, right? There was no social media, nothing, but we also know everything was changing to digital, right? I would have learned how to code. I would have learned how to develop websites. I would have, I would have been on social media the first day it started and been on it. I would have had some stock in that.
Right.
So my advice to high schoolers and college people is, like, right now, everything is digital, right? You have the world in your palms, right? Understand and master it. Whatever platform you want to be on, whether it's Instagram, you want to be an influencer selling clothes, whether you want to be on Twitter, whatever you want to do, build your audience. Understand that platform, understand the algorithm, understand how you get visibility, what hashtags you use, and get to it, right?
Yeah.
And just focus your time on that. You go consistently for a year, whatever you're doing is gonna pop eventually. Just make sure you have quality content and understand it. But if I'm in high school, I'm thinking about coding. How do I break a website apart? How do I, you know what I mean? In every aspect of it. How do I know the code? I call it the matrix because my boss is a computer scientist. Like, he pulls up the matrix on me about a website, and it's literally the matrix, the green numbers and the lines. I'm like, what is it? But that role commands 120,000 right out the gate. Right out the gate. So the more we understand that, and the more we understand about business ownership, how do we keep resources in house, things like that, right? How do we build our own? Let's become owners and entrepreneurs. I'm about that. Like, so if I'm in high school, what can I do in the industry? Not to just join it, but what can I do to disrupt the industry? Disrupt it. We disrupt, we get it, we get generational wealth, we share the knowledge, we pass the revenue, and we keep it in house.
I mean, I don't think there's anything else to say about that.
I wish I was back there on that time.
Had some Facebook stock early on.
Yeah.
Early on. Then got right out. As soon as they started doing that foolishness. Woo.
I guess I want to know also, like, what's kept you motivated? Like, I know you've talked about being money motivated and, taking care of your family, but are there some other areas that really just kept you grinding and sticking to sales and what it is that you do?
I think it's that one is family, of course, right? So one, providing for them, making sure they're good and all that other stuff, breaking the generational curse and all that stuff, right? But also climbing a ladder is something that really keeps me motivated, right? So how do we become in those positions of power that we were just talking about? How do we become the gatekeepers? Not even a gatekeeper, but how do we open the door for a bunch of people behind us, right?
Right.
Like, I could be lit on LinkedIn, or I could be doing $1 million in sales. But one of my boys who just came home or something like that, I can't put you in a position to get a job. Things like that motivate me, right? Like, how do I put my people in power or be the plug? Like, how do I put you in the right places? People like, Jarrett, how'd you get it? I don't have it right now. But when I do get it, trust and believe I'm going to open the floodgates. So how do we open the floodgates to something that keeps me motivated, keeps me grinding, and how do we just accelerate and elevate ourselves?
Yeah, I think that's something that we also want for our listeners is an opportunity. Like, if there was something that you said that maybe inspired them, or, they have a specific path that's similar to yours, if they're able to maybe reach out to you on LinkedIn, or if you'd be willing to be a mentor or just an informational interview, anything like that, I think you definitely have a great story and would love to be able to, connect you with other people if you are open for that.
Absolutely. Anybody who's listening, it's Jarrett Thomas, Jarrett Thomas. On LinkedIn, you'll see Senior Account Executive by Pull Rank. Please DM me, connect with me. Like, I'm on these type of calls, or not even just calls. This is a podcast, and I love talking about it. But, like, people who come to me on LinkedIn, just right before this, I was on a call with a CEO. You know what I mean? Just how do I get my LinkedIn right? So I'm always willing to help. I don't charge anything. I'm not at the point where I charge anything. I just want to see you grow. If you can give me a shout out, I love it. You know what I mean? And besides that, I'm always willing to help. So please connect with me on LinkedIn. I also have a podcast called Rankable. I'd love to have you guys on one day as well. And we continue nice. and we cross promote, cross market. And that's it. Love to connect with everybody. So please come. I'm the easiest person to approach.
Awesome.
All right.
Well, y'all heard the man getting his DMs. Yeah, Jarrett is really very helpful and always willing. I mean, I sent him a DM on LinkedIn like, hey, man, I need to understand this LinkedIn algorithm. And just like that, we were on a phone call. So really appreciate you.
Even take it back, right? Me and you were the only 2 African-American employees at our job.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
We were the only 2 African-Americans at Talkwalker, right? And the first time we met, just like that.
Yeah.
Go on the side, like, yo, did we not have some real conversations? We ain't to talk about it now, but me and you had some real conversations, Rob. We kind of foresee what was happening, and we luckily made some moves, you know?
Yeah, definitely. He was on the East Coast. I was on the West Coast. The only brothers in the company. Man, we really appreciate you being on the show.
No, Rob, appreciate you having me, man. It's an honor. It's a pleasure, man.